The empty platform was the kind of cold that did not move. Eunho was on the floor between two benches with his face on his arms, crying with the exhausted quietness of someone who had been crying for hours. Footsteps came down the platform without rushing, and Eunho looked up. One was standing down the platform in a long charcoal coat, taller than Jiwon, broader. He held himself still, learned over a long time not to take up more space than he needed to. The crying came back harder. The words came out before Eunho could stop them. Please do not take me back to him. One walked forward and stopped before he got close, and lowered himself slowly into a crouch. He extended one hand, palm up. Eunho flinched. He could not help it. His whole body did it before his mind could stop it. One's hand stopped in the air, then he pulled it back. Slowly, his scent shifted. The iron sharpened. Did he hit you? The platform went quieter than the snow. Eunho did not nod. He simply stopped breathing for a second, and that second was every confirmation one needed. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story. 7 years earlier, Eunho was 18 and standing in line at a coffee shop in Seongbuk-gu with 3,000 won in his pocket and an acceptance letter folded in his bag. The acceptance was for the painting program at a small art university on the west side of the city. He had not told his parents yet. He had not told anyone. He carried the letter with him for 2 weeks like a charm, taking it out at red lights and in cafe lines and on the bus, reading the same 3 lines over and over to make sure they had not changed since he last looked. The boy in front of him in line was tall and well-dressed and clearly older. Late 20s, Eunho thought. The kind of man who paid for a coffee without looking at the price. He had broad shoulders under a charcoal wool coat that had not come from any store Eunho knew the name of, and when he turned at the counter to wait for his drink, he caught sight of Eunho behind him, and his entire face changed. It was a small change, a softening, the mouth opening slightly, the eyes going somewhere they had not been going a second ago. Sorry, the man said. I have to ask. What is that scent? Eunho's face went hot. I do not wear cologne, he said. That is not cologne. I am sorry, I do not. That was not a complaint. The man's mouth turned into a smile that knew exactly what it was doing. I am Jiwon. Eunho. Eunho. Are you a student here? I am about to be. Where? Painting program at a place you are not telling me yet because you do not know if I am a stranger you should be telling things to. That is correct. Good instinct. He laughed when he said it. It was the laugh of a man who had been told he was charming his entire life and had decided to lean into the data. Eunho laughed back before he could stop himself. The barista called Jiwon's drink. Jiwon picked it up. Then he reached into his pocket, took out a business card, wrote a phone number on the back of it with a fountain pen, and slid it across the counter to Eunho. That is my personal number, not the one on the front. If you want coffee with someone older than you who is going to ask you questions about painting because he genuinely wants to know the answers and not for any other reason, call me. If you do not want that, throw it out. I will not be offended. He picked up his drink and left, and Eunho stood at the counter with the card in his hand and his ears burning. He told himself he would throw it out. He kept the card in the bottom of his bag for 3 days. On the 4th day, he called. Jiwon picked up on the second ring like he had been waiting. The first date was coffee at a place Eunho would never have walked into on his own. The second was dinner at a restaurant where the prices were not on the menu. The third was a private gallery opening Jiwon had access to that Eunho did not understand how anyone had access to. By the 2nd month, Eunho was eating at restaurants where the staff knew his name before he said it. By the 3rd month, his small studio apartment had a closet full of clothes that had not been there before, hung up by a delivery service, no card attached because Jiwon had said once that Eunho looked cold and the next morning 2 coats had arrived. Jiwon was kind. That was the word Eunho used in his own head, over and over. In the months, he could not quite explain to his friends what he was doing. Jiwon was kind. Jiwon listened. Jiwon remembered the names of his teachers and the titles of his favorite paintings and the kind of tea he liked when he was tired. Jiwon told him every week in those first months that he had never met anyone like him, that Eunho's scent had stopped him in the coffee shop, that Eunho was the most beautiful thing he had ever encountered. He used that word, thing. Eunho did not notice. There were red flags. Eunho could see them later, looking back, every single one of them lit up like a runway. How Jiwon never quite explained what he did for work. How certain men would come to a restaurant where they were eating and bow slightly to Jiwon and not say anything to Eunho. How Jiwon's older brother, on the one occasion Eunho met him at a family lunch in the Hanam-dong house, looked at Eunho the way one looks at a small animal that has wandered into a place it should not have wandered into. Concern. That was the word for the look. Eunho did not have the language for it then. He thought it was disapproval. He should have asked. He did not ask. He was 18, and he had just been told by someone he trusted that he was extraordinary, and nobody had ever told him that before. And the part of his brain that should have asked was no match for the part of his brain that had been waiting his whole life to hear it. A year after the coffee shop, Jiwon proposed. He took Eunho up to Namsan at sunset to a lookout point that had been closed to the public that day, which Eunho also did not ask about. The whole city was below them, turning gold and pink and slow, and Jiwon got down on one knee and said, "You are the love of my life. I knew it the second I smelled you. I am going to be with you forever. Marry me." Eunho said yes. He cried when he said it. Jiwon held him with both hands on his face and his thumbs under Eunho's eyes, catching the tears as they fell. And at that moment, on that hill, with the city below, and a ring on his finger that was the exact ring he would have chosen if anyone had asked him, Eunho believed every word that man had said to him, and he was going to keep believing it for almost another year. They married 4 months later. Eunho was 19. Jiwon was 29. The morning after the wedding, in the master suite of the Hanam-dong house, Eunho woke up alone in a bed he did not recognize. He was not panicked yet. Jiwon was always up early. He got out of bed and walked through the house. And the house was the size of a hotel, and the kitchen was 3 rooms over, and the staff did not look at him. And a man in a black suit was standing in the front hall like part of the wall. And that was when Eunho started to understand that he had not married a man. He had married into a system, and the system had been waiting for him to arrive. The first month was still soft. Jiwon was still kind. He took Eunho to galleries and brought him breakfast in bed and laughed at his jokes. But Eunho began to notice that Jiwon left the house at strange hours, that the men in the front hall changed shifts on a rotation like security, that some nights Jiwon came home with the staff already waiting in the foyer to take his coat away in silence and not return it for 2 days. Eunho asked once. Jiwon kissed him on the forehead and said, "You do not need to know about my work. You only need to know that I take care of you." He stopped asking. He had been asked to stop kindly by the man he loved, and he stopped. Then there was the bond, which Eunho had assumed they would put in place at the wedding. Jiwon had said they would not. Too public. Too many photographs. Too rushed. He had said it would be more meaningful in private. Eunho had agreed. After the wedding it became, after we settle in. After they settled in, it became, after the family is comfortable with you. After 3 months, when Eunho asked again, sitting on the edge of the bed in the master suite with his hands in his lap, Jiwon sat down next to him and pulled him under his arm and said, "Eunho, I want this to mean something. I want it to be after you have given me a child. So when I bond you, the bond is not just for us, it is for our family. Do you understand?" Eunho understood. He nodded against Jiwon's shoulder and did not push it further. He was 19 and in love, and had been told by the man he loved that the bond he wanted was on the way. The waiting was a thing he could do. He was good at waiting. The first try was 4 months in. Eunho got pregnant within weeks. He cried when he told Jiwon. Jiwon picked him up off the floor of the bathroom where they had read the test together and spun him in a circle and said, I knew the moment I met you. You were always going to give me everything. He lost the pregnancy at 9 weeks. He had been bleeding for 2 days before he understood what was happening. The doctor came to the house because they did not go to hospitals if they did not have to, and the doctor said the words, and Eunho did not hear them. Jiwon was in the room when the doctor said them. Jiwon's face did something Eunho had never seen it do before. The kindness left it like a curtain dropping. Then the curtain came back up, and Jiwon thanked the doctor, and the doctor left, and they were alone, and Jiwon said, What did you do? Eunho looked at him. He thought he had misheard. What? What did you do, Eunho, to lose it? I did not, the doctor said. The doctor said sometimes it just... The doctor said what you wanted to hear because the doctor is paid by my family. Do not lie to me. You stressed yourself. You did not eat enough. You did something. He said it calmly. That was the worst part. He said it like a man reading a quarterly report. And then he stood up and left the room and did not come back that night. And Eunho lay in the bed and bled and cried and apologized to a child that had never had a face. That was the first time. The kindness came back the next morning. Jiwon brought him breakfast and held him and said he was sorry, that grief had taken him somewhere ugly, that of course it was not Eunho's fault. Eunho cried into his shoulder and forgave him because the alternative was unthinkable. The second pregnancy came 8 months later. He lost it at 11 weeks. The third came a year after that. He lost it at 6. Each time, Jiwon's face did the same thing. Each time, the recovery took a little longer. Each time, the apology came a little later. The words in the moment got worse. By the third miscarriage, Jiwon was no longer asking what Eunho had done. He was telling him he ate too little, that he was too thin, that his body was rejecting the children because Eunho rejected the role, that his scent was getting weaker. Did Eunho not see? Did Eunho not understand that omegas who could not produce did not smell like omegas anymore? That Eunho was disappearing into his own failure? Eunho did see. He had been seeing for months. The bright peach he had carried in him since he was 16. The scent that had made strangers turn their heads on the sidewalk. The scent Jiwon had stopped him in a coffee line for, was thinning. The honey-crisp apple skin, the bright top note, had gone first, in year 2. The nectarine was thinning by the time of the third miscarriage. What remained was getting fainter every month, the way fruit smells when it has been left in a bowl too long. He stopped painting in year 2. He had not consciously stopped. He had simply not picked up a brush. And then a month had gone by. And then 6. The studio Jiwon had set up for him on the 3rd floor of the Hanam-dong house, with the north light and the easel and the canvases stretched and waiting, sat untouched. The door stayed closed. After a while, the staff stopped going in to clean it. The dust gathered. And then, near the end of the 3rd year, on a Sunday afternoon in autumn, Eunho looked up from a book he was not reading on the couch in the family room and saw Jiwon watching him from the doorway and said the wrong thing. He could not even remember now what he had said. It was something small, something he had said 100 times before, something that on another day would have made Jiwon laugh. Jiwon walked across the room. He sat down beside Eunho on the couch. He put a hand on Eunho's cheek. The touch was almost tender, almost like it had been at the beginning, and for a half-second Eunho leaned into it. Then Jiwon hit him. It was not hard. That was the thing Eunho remembered later, the thing his mind kept returning to over and over like a question he could not stop asking. It was not a hard hit. It was the kind a man could deliver and then claim, with full conviction, that he had not actually hurt anyone. Eunho did not move. Whatever was supposed to come next, the speaking, the breathing, the small involuntary noise people make when they are hit, none of it came. The house went so quiet he could hear the ticking of a clock in the next room. Jiwon pulled his hand back. He looked at it for a moment as if it had acted on its own. Then he looked at Eunho. And he said, in a voice that was almost gentle, almost confused, "Look what you made me do." Eunho started to cry. He did not make a sound. The tears just came. "Eunho, look at me. Look at me." Jiwon took his face in both hands now, and Eunho couldn't turn away, and Jiwon's thumbs were under his eyes catching the tears, the same gesture from Namsan 4 years earlier. It was not even that hard. Stop. Stop crying. You are crying like a child. It was nothing. You triggered me. You said something you knew would set me off. You are smart enough to know what you are doing. Do not act like a victim. You made me do that. Do you hear me? You made me. Eunho heard him, and Eunho did not cry where Jiwon could see for a long time after that. He had learned a lesson. Crying was a thing he had done wrong. Crying made it worse. The next morning, Jiwon brought breakfast. He set it on the bedside table. He sat down on the edge of the bed and put a hand on Eunho's hair and said, "I am sorry about last night. I had a long day. I should not have come home in that state. I will not let it happen again." Eunho said, "It is okay." It was not okay. It was not. It was the first time. They both knew it was the first time. They both knew that what they were doing was agreeing to pretend it had not happened. Jiwon kissed him on the forehead and stood up and left for the office, and Eunho ate the breakfast because not eating it would have made things worse, and when he had eaten it, he went to the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror and did not recognize what he saw. It happened again, 3 weeks later. Then, twice, in 1 month. Then it had a rhythm. Eunho learned the rhythm like a person learning the patterns of a sickness in their own body. He learned which words triggered Jiwon and avoided them. He learned which expressions on his face to keep off it. He learned to eat the right amount, which was not too little because that meant he was rejecting Jiwon's care, and not too much because that meant he was letting himself go. He learned to stop seeing the friends he had made at the high school, because Jiwon did not like him being away from the house too often, because Jiwon was worried, because the world was dangerous for someone like Eunho. Did Eunho not see that? Did Eunho not understand how much Jiwon had to protect him from? He learned not to call his parents when he was upset, because if his parents heard him upset, they might come, and if they came, Jiwon might say something. And if Jiwon said something, his parents might find out what was happening, and if his parents found out what was happening, Jiwon had told him, very calmly, very clearly, more than once, what would happen. "You know what I am capable of," Jiwon said, the second time he hit him, and again the fifth, and again, until Eunho stopped needing to hear the sentence out loud. He had it in his own head by then. He learned other things too. He learned that the staff in the house knew, and that knowing did not mean helping, because the staff in the house were paid by Jiwon's father, and the staff in the house had families of their own. He learned that the housekeeper, an older beta woman named Mrs. Jiang, who had been with the family for 30 years, would sometimes leave a cup of barley tea on his bedside table on his bad mornings, without saying a word. He learned that this was the closest thing to kindness he was going to get inside that house, and that if he ever thanked her out loud, she would be fired by the end of the week. He learned to call his parents on the schedule Jiwon set, which was every Sunday at noon, on speakerphone with Jiwon in the room. He learned the script. His parents asked how he was. Eunho said he was happy. His parents asked if Jiwon was treating him well. Eunho said Jiwon was wonderful. His mother said she missed him. Eunho said he missed her too. He had not seen his mother in person in 2 years. She lived not far outside the city. She had been told gently by Jiwon that Eunho was going through some health issues and needed quiet, and that visits were stressful for him. She had believed it. She had no reason not to. Her son sounded fine on the phone every Sunday at noon. Once, in year 3, his mother had called on a Wednesday. Off schedule. Eunho had been alone in the bedroom. He had answered without thinking. His mother had said, "I had a strange feeling. I just wanted to hear your voice." Eunho had not been able to speak for a moment. The kindness in her voice had been an actual physical sensation, in his chest, like something being pulled. "I am fine, Mom," he had said finally. "I was just napping." "Are you sure?" "I am sure. Eunho, if you ever needed." I know. I do not. I am fine. She had let it go. She had let it go because letting go was easier than the alternative, because the alternative was admitting she had failed him, and a mother does not easily admit that. Eunho understood this. Eunho understood it then, sitting on the bed of a house he could not leave, and he loved her more for the failure than he would have loved her for the rescue, because the rescue would have cost her something he did not want her to pay. Jiwon had come home that evening. He had asked casually whether Eunho's mother had called. Eunho had said no. Jiwon had checked the phone log. There had been consequences for the lie and consequences for the call. Eunho had learned that night not to lie about phone calls. He had also learned that even unanswered calls could be punished. His scent began to fade in year 2. Slowly. The bright top note went first, the honey-crisp apple skin that had stopped Jiwon in the coffee line. By year 3, the nectarine was thinning. By year 4, the nectarine was gone. What remained was the peach. Alone. Faint. The bottom note of a scent that had once been a full chord. Sometimes at night, when he was alone in the bed and Jiwon was not home, Eunho would lie still and breathe in and try to detect himself. There would be nothing. He would lie there and try to remember what he had smelled like at 16, at 17, at 18 in the coffee line, and he would not be able to. The memory was a thing about him. It was no longer a thing in him. His right hand had started shaking sometime in year 3. Not all the time. In specific moments when a phone rang or a door opened in the wrong rhythm, his right hand would begin to tremble and would not stop for a long time afterward. He did not tell anyone. He had stopped telling anyone things. He would sit on it under the dinner table. He would press it against the cold side of a glass. It was, like everything else, something he learned to manage. Year 4. He stopped trying to get pregnant. He could not have said when he stopped. His cycles had become unpredictable. His body was not cooperating with anything anymore. Jiwon did not push. Jiwon had stopped touching him much by then. He came home late. He smelled like other people. Eunho noticed and did not let himself notice. There was a hierarchy of things he could survive knowing. He kept the worst of them below the surface. The other women, when he allowed himself to think about them, did not hurt as they would have hurt at 21. By year 4, they were almost a relief. They took Jiwon's attention away from him. They were the reason Jiwon came home at 3 in the morning instead of 6 in the evening. He was grateful to them, in a quiet, sick way, and the gratitude was one of the things he could not let himself look at directly. Year 5. He was 23. He looked 30. He weighed less than he had at 16. Painting was something he had done in another life. Reading was something he had done in another life. The phone rang sometimes and he watched it ring. He spoke to the staff in short, polite sentences and they spoke back to him in the same. And nobody in that house had said his name with warmth in a long time. His parents had stopped asking by year 5 whether he was happy. The Sunday calls had become weather reports. His mother said it had rained. His father said the back was acting up. Eunho said he was glad to hear from them. Nobody asked the real question anymore because asking the real question and getting the rehearsed answer had become a thing that hurt his mother more than not asking. The scent was almost gone by then. Jiwon noticed. Jiwon mentioned it. "You used to smell like fruit," he said one night at the dinner table, to Eunho, to no one, to himself. "You used to smell like a peach orchard in summer. I would walk into a room and know you had been there an hour before. And now I sleep next to you, and I cannot smell you at all. Do you know what that is? Do you know what an omega who does not smell like an omega is? I married a fruit, and now I am sleeping next to nothing." He laughed when he said it. He had a glass of wine in his hand. He was not even angry. He was making a joke at Eunho's expense, like he had done 100 times by then, and he expected Eunho to laugh too, and Eunho did. He laughed at himself. He laughed at the joke about himself disappearing. It was that laugh. More than the slap. More than the words that Eunho thought about later, on the train, on the platform, on the floor with his face in his arms. The fact that he had laughed. The fact that he had stopped being a person enough to laugh at the joke about it. There were other moments. There were always other moments. The afternoon he had found a sketchbook in the back of a drawer, his sketchbook from before, the last one he had filled, and had opened it and seen a self-portrait on the 3rd page. He had stared at the boy in the drawing for a long time. The boy had a brightness in his eyes. The boy was looking out at himself, the future self, with something like trust. Eunho had closed the sketchbook and put it back in the drawer and gone to lie down because his chest had started to do something he did not have time for. The night he had stood in the bathroom 10 months before he ran and looked at himself in the mirror and could not find his own face. He knew it was his face because it was reflected in the right place. But the eyes were not eyes he recognized. The mouth was not a mouth that had ever said anything he wanted to say. He had stood there for a long time and tried to remember what the boy in the sketchbook had looked like, and he could not. The boy was gone. The boy had been gone for a while. He had simply not noticed when. That had been the night he started thinking about the train. Not seriously, not yet. Just as an option, just as a thing he had not crossed off the list. He had crossed off so many things by then. He had crossed off painting. He had crossed off friendship. He had crossed off calling his mother on a Wednesday. He had crossed off wearing the colors he had worn at 18. He had crossed off saying the names of people he had liked. He had crossed off looking out windows for too long, because looking out windows for too long was a thing Jiwon noticed and asked about. The list had gotten very short. By the end, the only things left on it were eating, sleeping, breathing, and the train. Year 6, 25. He woke up on a Tuesday morning in February. He looked at the ceiling. The crying that had become his weather had gone. So had everything that used to come before crying. He thought calmly, like a person thinking about lunch, that he was going to die today. He was going to walk to Seoul Station, and he was going to step in front of a train, and that would be the end of it. He got up. He put on the clothes that were closest. He took his old wool coat from the closet, the one from before the marriage, the one Jiwon had told him to throw out, and that Eunho had hidden in the back instead, the one that still smelled, faintly, of the boy he had been at 18. He took nothing else. He walked out of the house. The man in the front hall did not stop him because Eunho was the master's husband, and the master's husband was allowed to leave. Eunho took the subway to Seoul Station. He stood on the platform. He did not step in front of the train. He could not have said why. He stood at the yellow line and watched the train come, and watched it stop, and watched the doors open, and then his body, without consulting him, walked onto the train. It was a regional KTX going east. It was going to Gangneung on the coast. He sat down in a seat that someone had vacated, and he put his head against the window, and he rode for hours, and he did not know what he was going to do when he got there. He got off 2 stops before the terminus, a small station, mostly closed at that hour, the kind of stop that only the regional line used. The platform was empty. The wind was coming off the mountains. He sat down between 2 benches because his legs would not hold him anymore, and he started to cry. Finally, in a way he had not let himself cry in years, and that was when he heard the footsteps. His husband had been awake by then. His husband had called his older brother. His older brother had run the tracking with the same method he applied to everything else. Quietly, methodically, without complaint. He had known where Eunho was within hours. He had been on the road soon after. He had walked down a regional platform in the dark without rushing, and he had crouched in front of a crying boy, and he had not touched him. He had asked one question. He had heard the silence. He had understood, and he had lied to his brother for the first time that mattered. The hotel was a small business hotel on the Gangneung side, off the main road, the kind that had family-run breakfast in the morning and never asked for a passport. The clerk was a man in his 50s with reading glasses pushed up on his head and a half-eaten bowl of soup beside the registration log. He looked up when they walked in. He looked at Won for a half-second longer than at most guests. He did not finish looking at Eunho at all. Won set cash on the counter without speaking. The clerk took it. There was no request for ID, no request for names, no second look at the wool coat Eunho was wearing or at how Eunho was standing slightly behind Won. He typed 2 room numbers into his computer, slid 2 key cards across the counter, and went back to his soup. The whole exchange took less than a minute. Eunho watched it without understanding what he was watching. He had spent 6 years in a house where people deferred to Jiwon, and the deference had always come with calculation, with men leaning toward Jiwon to read his mood. The clerk had not leaned toward Won. The clerk had simply, without being asked, decided not to know anything about them. It was not the same kind of deference. It was a quieter kind, the kind you offered to a person whose business you had already decided was not yours. One had taken the room on the side of the hallway closer to the elevator. He had given Eunho the room at the end, quieter, further from the entrance. Eunho had not asked for any of these things. They had simply been arranged in the moments between the car and the elevator. At the door of his room, Eunho had stopped with his hand on the keycard reader. "Thank you for not asking me to share a room," he had said. He had not looked at Won when he said it. He had looked at the door. "I would not ask you that." A small space of hallway between them. Nothing else said. Eunho had gone in. The door had closed. Won had stood in the hallway for a moment and then walked to his own room and sat on the edge of his bed and put his hands on his knees. He had been preparing for this day for 15 years. He had not known what the day would look like or who would be in it. He knew now. He took out his phone, ran the numbers in his head one more time, mapped the order of moves over the next 3 weeks, and stood up. He did not need long. He had been ready for a long time. He called his brother at 11 that night. "Anything," Jiwon said. "Bad lead. Look-alike at the platform. Not him." "Where are you?" "Gangneung side. I am going to drive the coastal road in the morning. He may have gotten on a bus." "Drive faster. He is making a fool of me." "I will." He hung up. He did not move for 10 minutes. Then he texted Eunho 3 doors down. The message said, "I am in room 308. The door is unlocked. If you need anything in the night, including for me to be on the other side of your door, knock once on the wall. I will hear it." Eunho read the message. He did not reply. He fell asleep on top of the covers in the clothes he had been wearing for 2 days, the wool coat folded across the foot of the bed, and he did not knock. In the morning, One was already in the hallway when Eunho opened the door. He was leaning against the wall with 2 coffees from the lobby and a paper bag of pastries and the look of a man who had not slept. He held out 1 coffee without saying anything. Eunho took it. They drank in the hallway in silence, and neither of them mentioned the night. The first 3 days, Eunho barely spoke. One brought food twice a day and left it on the table by the door of Eunho's room. He did not stay to watch him eat. He went back to his own room and worked on a laptop and answered phone calls quietly in the hallway when they came. Eunho ate a little, slept a lot. The sleeping was not restful. He woke every hour with his heart pounding, sure that the door was about to open, that Jiwon was already in the hallway, that it had all been a dream and he was still in the Hanamdong house and he had said the wrong thing again. Each time, in the dark, he listened for the sound of the next room. He could hear Won if he was very still. The small sound of a chair shifting, a page turning. Once, very late, the low murmur of a phone call he could not make out the words of. The sounds were proof of life. They were proof that the man who had told him he was not going to be hurt was where he had said he would be. On the 4th day, Eunho came out of his room and walked down the hall to Won's door and knocked. "I am hungry," he said when Won opened it. He looked at the floor when he said it. "For real food, not the pastries." Won nodded once. "There is a small place across the street. Diner. Open until 11. We can go now if you like." "I do not have a coat." "You have my coat." "I do not want to take yours." "It is yours." He said it without ceremony, like a man stating the temperature, and Eunho did not have an argument for it. He put on the charcoal coat over his thin one. They went down in the elevator. They crossed the street in the cold dark. The diner was small and warm and smelled like fish stew. The woman behind the counter looked up when they came in. She was in her 60s, with short gray hair and a newspaper open on the counter. She looked at Won. She looked at Eunho. She looked at Won again, longer than at Eunho, and the looking was not friendly and not unfriendly. It was assessing. Then she nodded once, a small nod, and went back to her newspaper. Won nodded back. He did not say anything. He led Eunho to a table by the window. The woman brought soup and rice and side dishes without taking an order, the way you do when someone has eaten in your place before and you remember what they ordered. They had not eaten there before. Eunho understood, again, that there were rules being followed in this room that he could not name. One had walked into a place he had never been, and the woman behind the counter had decided, in the time it took her to look up, what kind of guest he was and what kind of guest meant. Feed him. Do not ask questions. Do not call attention. Eunho ate a bowl of soup and a small plate of rice and the side dishes the woman brought without being asked. He ate slowly. Won ate the same thing across from him without speaking until Eunho was done. Better. Yes. Tomorrow we eat twice. Okay. That was the entire conversation. Eunho lay in his bed that night and went over it again. He could not say why it stayed with him. Then he understood. One had not asked him a single thing. He had just said what tomorrow looked like. Eunho had said, okay. Nobody had told Eunho what he was doing tomorrow without first asking him for a reaction. In a long time. Most of his last 6 years had been a long string of being told and being expected to perform happy about it. One had simply made a plan and let him take it or leave it. Eunho fell asleep thinking about that. The first week ended like that. Small announcements, small agreements. On the 5th day they walked along the breakwater. The sea in winter was the color of something old, gray-green and slow, and the wind off the water was sharp enough that Eunho pulled the charcoal coat tighter around himself without thinking about it. One walked 4 paces behind. Not following, not hurting, just there. When Eunho stopped to look at the gulls picking at something on the rocks, one stopped. When Eunho started walking again, one did. They did not talk. He had not had silence like this in 7 years. In the Hanam-dong house, silence had always been a question or a punishment. On the breakwater, silence was just the wind and the sea and the sound of their 2 pairs of shoes on the concrete walking path. Halfway down, Eunho stopped at a railing and looked at the water for a long time. He did not know what he was looking at. He was just looking. After a while he turned to say something to Won, he did not know what, and Won was standing in the same place he had been when Eunho stopped, hands in his pockets, looking at the same patch of sea. Not at Eunho. At the water. Eunho understood then that Won was not watching him. Won was just there. Eunho did not say anything. He turned back to the water. They stayed there until the cold made his hands numb. Won did not say go. On the way back, Eunho's right hand, the one that had been shaking on and off for the last few years, began to shake worse in the cold. He pulled the cuff of the coat down over it. Won did not say anything. The next morning there was a small hand warmer on top of the coffee outside his door, the disposable kind, already activated, warm. No note, no mention. When Eunho came out into the hall holding it, Won was already looking at his phone, already not making it a thing. Eunho did not say thank you. He did not have the language for it. He put the warmer in his pocket and let his hand rest against it. Won glanced up once, briefly. His face did not change. He did not say anything. He went back to his phone. A bookstore on the 6th day. Eunho running his hands along the spines without taking anything off the shelf. One waiting by the door without rushing him. At one point, Eunho found a small monograph on a Korean painter he had liked at 17, and he stood looking at the cover for a long time, and he put it back. One noticed. Won did not say anything. The next morning, the book was on the small table outside Eunho's door, unwrapped, with the receipt tucked inside in case Eunho wanted to return it. Eunho did not return it. He sat with it on his bed for an hour before he opened it, and when he did, his hands were shaking, and not from the cold. On the 7th day, Won dropped a small packet of sugar on the floor of the elevator on their way down to the diner and bent to pick it up at the same time Eunho did, and they nearly knocked heads, and Eunho laughed. It was a small laugh. It got out of him before he could stop it. It surprised him so much that he covered his mouth with his hand, like he had said something he should not have said. One straightened up with the sugar packet in his hand and looked at Eunho and said very calmly, "You are allowed to laugh." "I know." "You are allowed to laugh, Eunho." "I know." He said it twice more in the elevator, in his own head, like a sentence he was learning how to read. By the end of the 7th day, Eunho had said more sentences out loud than he had said in any week of the last 2 years, and most of them had been to Won, and none of them had been wrong. The phone calls from Jiwon kept coming. Won took them in the hallway. Eunho did not ask. He could see in the set of Won's shoulders when he came back from a call that the calls were getting harder. By the 2nd week, Jiwon was calling daily, then twice daily. Won did not lie elaborately. He kept the lies small. False roads, wrong cities. Times he had been in the wrong place. He let Jiwon think he was getting old, that he was losing his touch, that he was failing at the one thing he had never failed at. The cost of that lie, on Won's face, in the hallway at night, was something Eunho did not have words for and could not stop watching. Eunho was beginning to notice things again. That was a feature of the 2nd week. He noticed that Won left the lobby coffee without sugar at his door at 7 and brought the pastries himself at 9. He noticed that Won walked on the street side of the sidewalk when they crossed to the diner. He noticed that Won's coat was always within reach of his door because his door was down the hall from Eunho's, and he could be at it fast if he had to be. He noticed that Won, when they entered any room, took a half-second longer than he needed to before sitting, and that the half-second was Won checking exits. He noticed all of these things and did not name any of them. Naming them was not yet a thing he could do. He noticed something else too. He noticed it in his own body. When Won walked into a room, the room reorganized itself around him, not in a way Eunho had ever felt before. With Jiwon, when Jiwon walked into a room, the air went tight. Eunho would start monitoring himself, watching what his face was doing, what his hands were doing. With Won, his body did the opposite. It loosened. The first time he caught it happening, on the 7th day, walking back from the diner, it confused him so much that he stopped on the sidewalk and tried to figure out what was wrong with him. Won stopped a step behind him and waited. Eunho did not explain. He started walking again. By the end of the 2nd week, the loosening was an automatic thing his body did when Won was within scenting distance. He did not have a word for it. He thought sometimes that the closest word was quiet. His own body, after years of being a thing he had to manage, going briefly quiet around this one specific man. On the 11th day at the diner, Eunho asked Won a question. It was the first one he had asked any alpha in years. It was a small question. It got out of him in the same surprised way the laugh had. They had been eating in their usual quiet, and Won had picked up a side dish of pickled radish, and Eunho, watching, said before he could stop himself, "Did your mother make this for you when you were a boy?" Won paused, fork still in the small dish. He looked at Eunho. Then he looked back at the radish. He set the fork down. "No," he said. "My mother did not cook. There was a woman in the kitchen who did. Her name was Mrs. Bay. She made this for me on Sundays. She used too much sugar. It is the only way I like it." He picked the fork up again. He took a bite. Eunho watched him. "What?" "You answered a question. You asked one. You did not have to answer. I just..." "Eunho." "What?" "I have not had anyone ask me a question in a long time. You are allowed to ask. I am allowed to answer. We can do this. It does not have to be a thing. Eunho looked at his bowl. He could feel his face doing something. He did not know what. Okay. Okay. Mrs. Bay sounds nice? She was. She left when I was 20 because the house got worse. I never found out where she went. He said it without softness, just the fact. But the fact was, the first piece of his life he had given Eunho, and Eunho put it carefully somewhere in his head where he was keeping things, and for the rest of the night his scent reached very faintly towards something it could not yet name. On the 12th day, his fever started small and built over the afternoon. By dinner, he could not eat. His skin felt strange. Not the heat of a heat, he knew the difference. This was something else. His face was hot. His hands were shaking. He went back to his room and lay on the bed in his clothes with the lamp on and did not understand what was happening to him. He knocked on the wall once, exactly as Won had told him to. He heard the chair in the next room move. He heard the door of Won's room open. He heard footsteps in the hall, then a knock on his own door, soft. Eunho, it is me. Do not come in. All right. A pause. Are you safe? I am not. I do not know what is happening. I am hot. How hot? Very. My hands are shaking. Have you had food today? Yes. Water. Some. I am going to the lobby for water and a thermometer. Do not get out of the bed. I will be back in 3 minutes. The door of my room is open. If anything frightens you, go in. Okay. He came back. He set the water and the thermometer on the floor outside Eunho's door. He did not come in. I am going to sit in the hallway by your door for the night. If you need me to leave, I will leave. If you need me to come in, you have to say so out loud. You do not have to do that. I am doing it. Eunho took his temperature with his hand shaking. It was not high. A degree. Maybe a degree and a half. He drank the water. He lay back down. He could feel Won on the other side of the door. He did not have to imagine it. He could smell very faintly the iron and the walnut, and his own scent, which had been a ghost for years, did something he had not felt it do in 5. It surfaced. Just for a moment. The peach, sweet and impossibly bright, came up from somewhere it had been hiding. It filled the room, briefly, then it sank back down. He pressed his hand flat against the inside of the door at the height where he knew Won's shoulder was on the other side, and he fell asleep with his palm on the wood. In the hallway, Won's scent locked. The iron sharpened to a hard edge. The walnut warmed. He did not move from the wall. He sat there until the hotel went quiet at 3 in the morning, and then quieter at 4, and then began to wake up again at 6. And he was still there when Eunho opened the door at 7, in clothes that had been slept in, and a face that had not seen good sleep in years. You stayed. I said I would. Eunho looked at him for a long second. He did not say, thank you. He did not know how to say thank you for this. He simply stood in the doorway and let Won see him, properly, without anything between them. The peach surfaced again. Won caught it. He did not react. I am hungry, Eunho said. I know. The 3rd week. Eunho started talking. Not in long stretches, in small pieces. At dinner one night he told Won what his mother used to make when he was a child. The next night he told him the name of the high school art teacher who had told him he could be good if he worked at it. The night after that he told him, in 3 sentences, what the studio on the 3rd floor of the Hanamdong house had looked like before the dust. He did not cry, telling any of it. He had relearned how to talk about himself without crying. Won listened. Won did not ask follow-up questions. Won just made room in the silence for the next sentence whenever Eunho was ready for it. The phone calls were getting harder. Jiwon called twice on the 15th day. 3 times on the 16th. By the 17th he was calling every 2 hours, and Won was answering every one of them. because not answering would have set off alarms. Eunho would sit in his room with the door open, the agreed 6 inches, and listen to the cadence of one side of the conversations. The voice was always quiet, always patient, always in the same register one used in the hallway when he set the coffee down. Eunho thought sometimes that Juan could lie, because Juan did not change. The lying did not require performance. It only required that Juan stay the same on the phone as he was off it. Once, on the 16th day, Eunho heard Juan say, "I am not getting old, Jiwon. I am being thorough." He heard Jiwon's voice rise on the other end. He could not hear the words. "Then take me off it. Send someone else. I will fly to Tokyo this afternoon, and you can have whoever you trust more handle this." Silence on the other end. That is what I thought. The call ended. One did not come back to the rooms for a few minutes. Eunho heard him in the stairwell, 3 floors up, footsteps on concrete, the small sound of a man putting weight against a wall and breathing. When he came back, the iron in his scent was very high. He saw Eunho's door open 6 inches. He saw Eunho watching him. "He will not take me off it," Juan said. "He cannot trust anyone with this except me, which means we have a little more time. Why does it cost you so much?" "What?" "To talk to him." One looked at him for a moment. He sat down in his hallway chair across from Eunho's door. He did not answer for a long time. "He is my brother," he said finally. That was the whole answer for almost a minute. Eunho waited. One was looking at the wall across from him, not at Eunho, his hands flat on his knees. "I taught him to ride a bicycle," one said. "I taught him to swim. When he was 12, he broke a window and I told my father I did it. My father hit me for it. Hard. I remember thinking, while it was happening, that I had done a good thing, that I had protected him." He stopped. He shook his head once, very slightly. "I tried to do that for years. Stayed close. Took things for him. Told myself if I was just there, just nearby, he would not become. He would stop short of. By the time he was 20, I knew that part of my life was finished. He was not going to stop short of anything. The protecting had not worked. He was going to be what he was going to be." Another pause. "That was the year I changed jobs in the family." Eunho did not say anything. He could see Juan was not finished. He was just speaking slowly because the words were heavy. "What it costs me to talk to him is not the lying," Juan said. "I can lie to him. The lying is easy. I have been lying to him in small ways my whole life. What costs me is that I knew, when he was 20, that the day was coming when I would have to move on him. I have been preparing for that day for 15 years. I built what I built. I waited for the conditions. I waited because moving too early gets people killed. I told myself that waiting was the right call. I am a patient man. I am very good at patience." He stopped. He was looking at the wall, not at Eunho. "What I am not good at is the part where waiting also has a cost. I knew he was hurting people during those 15 years. I knew because I was sometimes the one who came in afterward to clean it up. I told myself that the day was still coming, that when it arrived I would do the thing I had built the leverage to do, that my arriving on time, fully ready, would be worth what waiting cost. I told myself this for a long time." Another pause. "I went to your wedding. I saw your face at the family lunch. I came home that afternoon and I sat in my office and I asked myself if you were the one, if you were the day. I did not move. I told myself the leverage was not yet certain enough. I told myself I needed one more piece. There was always one more piece I told myself I needed. The truth was that I was not ready to give up the version of my life where I was working toward a day that had not arrived. I was comfortable in the preparation. The preparation was a kind of doing without the cost of having done." He looked at his hands. "I am telling you this because you deserve to know what you are deciding to trust. I am not a man who freezes. I am not a man who hides. I am a man who plans and then executes. What I have been is a man who planned for 15 years and called the planning the doing. That is over. Tonight is the day. I am not asking you to forgive me for the wedding or the family lunch. I am asking you to trust that I know how this goes from here. Because I have known how this goes from here for a long time, I have just not had a reason worth using it on. I have one now. A long silence. I am not absolving you. Good. I am also not blaming you. You are allowed to. I know. The silence sat there. Eunho looked at the man in the chair, the lines at the corners of his eyes, the hands flat on the knees, the iron and walnut scent that had been beside him for over 2 weeks now. He tried to find the fear. He had spent 7 years afraid of every alpha in every room. The fear was supposed to be there. It was not. I do not blame you, Eunho said again. Okay. Will you tell me something? Yes. At the family lunch, 3 years ago. The one I went to with him. I saw you across the table. You looked at me like you were worried about me. I thought it was disapproval. Was it? No. What was it? You were not all the way in the room. You sat at the table and you held your face very still, and you did not laugh once the entire afternoon. I noticed it almost as soon as you sat down. I told myself a lot of things about why. I told myself you were shy. I told myself you were tired. I told myself a lot of things. Eunho did not move. I should have asked you that day, Won said. I knew. I did not know no, but I knew enough that I should have asked. I did not ask. I am sorry. You are saying sorry for the wrong thing. What? You are saying sorry for not asking. You did not have a right to ask. You did not know me. You should be saying sorry for what your brother did, not for what you did. One looked at him. I am saying sorry for the thing that is mine to be sorry for. Eunho thought about this for a long moment. He thought about the difference. Jiwon had apologized after every slap, and the apologies had taken up all the air. They had been about Jiwon's grief, Jiwon's regret, Jiwon needing forgiveness. There had never been room in those apologies for Eunho. One was apologizing for the part that was his and leaving the rest for the people it belonged to. Okay, Eunho said. Okay. That was the end of the conversation. One stayed in his chair. Eunho stayed in his room with the door open 6 inches. After a while, Eunho fell asleep in his clothes, still upright on the bed, and when he woke at 4 in the morning, the chair in the hallway was empty, and One's door was closed, and the hotel was very quiet. And Eunho got up and walked in his socks the few feet to One's door, and he stood there with his hand against the wood, and he listened to the sound of a man breathing on the other side, and he went back to his own room and slept the rest of the night without waking. The 3rd week kept going. They walked the breakwater. They went to the bookstore again. On the 17th day, Eunho picked up a small sketchbook and a set of charcoal pencils at the bookstore, and One paid for them without comment. And they walked back to the hotel, and when they got to Eunho's door, Eunho held the bag for a moment and looked at it like he did not know what to do with it. You do not have to use them, Won said. I know. You do not have to use them this year. I know. He went into his room. He put the bag on the small desk. He did not open it for 2 days. On the 18th day, they were at the diner. The woman behind the counter said something dry to Won about how he ate the same dish every visit. And Eunho, who was looking at the menu, said without looking up, he ordered the spicy one yesterday. You missed it. The woman laughed. One looked at Eunho. Eunho laughed, small, surprised. The laugh got out before he could catch it. For 1 second, the apple skin came back. Bright and clean and unmistakable, the scent of an 18-year-old in a coffee line. It filled the booth, and the woman behind the counter looked up and her expression changed, and One's hand on the table between them went very still. Eunho did not notice. He was looking at his menu. One did not say anything about it. He paid the bill. They walked back to the hotel. One was quieter than usual on the walk, and Eunho noticed and did not ask. And at the door of his room, Eunho stopped and said, "Thank you for not asking." For what? For anything. He went inside. That night, after 5 years without touching a sketchbook, he opened one. He did not draw anything, he just opened it. The blank page sat in front of him on the small hotel desk, and he put the charcoal pencil down beside it, and he sat with it for a long time. In the third-floor studio in Hanam-dong, every time he had looked at a blank page, he had felt the page judging him for not being able to fill it. The hotel page was different. The page was just a page. He could fill it or not fill it. Either way, it would still be a page in the morning, and he would still be in the room, and the choice would still be his. He drew a line, one line, across the middle of the page. He looked at it. He closed the sketchbook, and it was enough for that day. On the 19th day, he drew the view from his hotel window. Roughly, without thinking too hard, the line of the sea, the shapes of the buildings between him and the water. He worked for 40 minutes and stopped, not because he was tired, but because the sketch was done, and he did not want to ruin it by overworking it. He looked at the page when he closed the book. He did not love what he had drawn, but he had drawn it. The hand had remembered. That evening at the diner, he did not show Won the sketch. He thought about showing it. He decided not to. Some things were his. He wanted the sketch to be his. He wanted the choice not to share it to be his too. Both were his. On the 20th day, the phone call from Jiwon was different. One took it in the hallway as usual. Eunho was in his own room with the door open 6 inches because that was how they had been keeping the doors lately. 6 inches. No more, no less. He could hear Jiwon's voice through Won's phone. He could not hear the words. He could hear the temperature, and the temperature was wrong. Won hung up. He stood in the hallway for a moment. Then he came to Eunho's door and stopped at the 6 inches, and did not open it further. Eunho. Yes, he is sending men. What? He does not believe me anymore. He is sending people he trusts more than me. They will not be efficient like I was. They will check every hotel in 3 counties. We have maybe 2 days before they get here. Eunho went very still. What do we do? I have options. I will lay them out for you. You are going to choose, not me. I will not choose for you. Eunho looked at him. The hallway light was behind Won, and his face was in shadow, but his scent was very close, the iron and the walnut, and Eunho realized he had not flinched at the sound of an alpha's voice in the next room in over a week. Okay, Eunho said. That night, Eunho did not sleep. He sat up in the bed with the lamp on, and he thought, for the first time in 7 years, about what he wanted. Not what he was supposed to want. Not what he had been told to want. What he, Eunho, actually wanted. The list was very short. He wanted to paint again. He wanted to be the kind of tired that came from working hard at something he had chosen. He wanted to be in a room where, when an alpha walked in, he did not stop breathing. And he wanted, very quietly, to know what would happen if his scent came back fully. In the morning, he opened his door. One was in the hallway, as he had been every morning for 3 weeks with 2 coffees. You did not sleep, Won said. Neither did you. No. Eunho took his coffee. Their fingers brushed. It was the first deliberate contact in 3 weeks. Eunho did not flinch. Won did not move. The peach came up from somewhere deep and brushed against the iron in the air and held there for a second, and then they both stepped back into the careful distance they had built, because the distance was still what kept Eunho safe. And they both knew it. You said you had a plan, Eunho said. I do. Tell me. One set his coffee down on the small table between their 2 doors, both hands free now. You go to your parents, he said. Eunho went still. Hear me before you answer. Eunho did not say anything. You go home. Today. I take you to the train station this afternoon. You tell them everything. You sit in their kitchen, and you tell them what their son-in-law has been doing for 6 years. You let them be your parents again. You stay there. He will go to that house. The minute he knows I am there, you know he will. He will not get there. That is my part of it. After I put you on the train, I go back to Seoul. I go to my brother. I tell him to his face that you are not coming back to him ever. I tell him what I have. He knows what I have. I have had it for 15 years. He has known for that long that I have it. I tell him that if he goes near you, your parents, your old apartment, anyone you know, what I have goes to our father that night, and to the June family, who he has been doing private deals with that our father does not know about. He stops, or he loses everything he has. What do you have? One paused. 2 things. The first is records. He has been skimming from the family's operations for 9 years. Small at first, then larger. He hides it across accounts our father does not check. I do check them. I have copies of everything since the year he turned 26. Our father would disown him before the end of the day. He would not be the heir. He would not be anything. He would lose the company, the house, the protection, all of it. Eunho watched him. The second is worse. There are 3 men he killed himself without family authorization in the years he was being trained. 2 were rivals our father had told him to leave alone. 1 was a bookkeeper who saw too much. I have the locations. I have the timing. I have one of his phones from that period. The June family and 2 others he does business with would not work with him again if they knew he had broken family rules that openly. He would lose his standing in the only world he cares about being respected in. Eunho did not say anything for a long time. You have had this for 15 years. Yes. Why did you keep it? Because I knew by the time I was 22 that one day I would have to use it. I did not know what the day would look like. I did not know it would have you in it. But I knew there would be a day, so I built it carefully. I kept it current. I made sure he knew I had it, but did not know what was in it. I made sure I had what I needed when the time came. I am ready. I have been ready for years. He would have you killed before you walked into the house. He would not. You do not know that. I do know that. He needs me alive to keep the family running. He cannot replace me. He has known for 15 years that the day he tries to replace me is the day what I have lands in our father's hands, and the June family's. He knows the math. He will not move on me. You sound very sure. I am very sure. Eunho's hand was tight around the coffee cup. He set it down before he dropped it. And the other option, he said. What is the other one? One looked at him for a long second. There is no other option, Eunho. There is what I just said. Or there is this. Forever. This. Hotel rooms. Different cities every few months. Me lying to him for the rest of my life. You hiding for the rest of yours. No parents, no painting under your own name, no friends, no mail with your name on it. We could do that. For a year. Maybe 2. Eventually he gets close enough, or I make a mistake, or you get tired enough to walk into a coffee shop where someone recognizes you. And then it ends. And it ends badly. And it ends with both of us in worse shape than we are now. He paused. That is not a plan. That is a slower version of going back to him. Eunho looked at the floor. You have been thinking about this for 3 weeks. Yes. You are sure about the parents one? I am sure. Eunho looked down at his coffee, then at Juan, then at the floor again. I need time. How much? I do not know. Eunho. I know. I know we do not have time. I know he is sending people, I know. That is not what I was going to say. What were you going to say? I was going to say, take the day. We have today. Probably tomorrow. After that it gets harder. But you have today. Eunho nodded once. He could not look at Juan. He took his coffee and he went back into his room and he closed the door not fully, but to the 6 inches they had been keeping it at, and he sat on the bed and he held the coffee in both hands until it went cold. And he thought. He thought about his mother. He thought about her voice on the Sunday calls. He thought about her face in the kitchen of his old house. He thought about telling her. He thought about her hands on his face. He thought about his father, who did not cry, putting his hand on Eunho's shoulder and not lifting it for a long time. He thought about Juan walking into the Hanamdong house with that calm face and that quiet voice. He thought about Jiwon's response. He thought about the men Jiwon had on retainer, the ones who came to the house, the ones who looked at Eunho like he was furniture. He did not know whether Won could hold against that many. He suspected he could. He could not be sure. 3 weeks. 3 weeks was nothing. 3 weeks was also more sentences spoken back to him, in a register that was not contempt or correction or performance, than he had heard in 6 years of marriage. 3 weeks was a man in a hallway with 2 coffees every morning who had never once tried to come into his room. He did not know if 3 weeks was enough. He knew also that his time was not going to grow. He sat with the cold coffee until the light in the room changed, until the afternoon went gray and the snow started up again outside the window. He did not eat. He did not call out to Won in the hall. He could hear Won's chair occasionally through the wall. He could hear the small sounds of a man who was not pushing him. Around 4 in the afternoon, he stood up. He went to the door. He opened it the rest of the way. Won was sitting in the hallway in the chair he had pulled from his own room, his coat across his lap, his eyes closed, not asleep. He opened them when he heard the door. "I have not decided," Eunho said. "That is fair. I want to ask you something." "Ask." "If I say no, if I say no to going home and you do not go to him, what happens then? What is the version where I say no?" "There is no version where you say no." "Eunho, that is what I was telling you. There is the parents' one, or there is hiding forever. You can choose hiding. I will hide you. I will keep doing this for as long as you want me to. I am telling you it does not work for long. I am not telling you that to push you. I am telling you because it is the truth. You are pushing me. I am answering your question. It feels like pushing. Then I am sorry. I do not know how to tell you the truth without it feeling like that. I can stop telling you the truth. I will stop. I will keep my opinion to myself and you can decide what you want." "No, do not do that." "All right. Just give me until tomorrow." "Tomorrow? I will tell you in the morning. I promise. Tomorrow morning." "All right. Will you eat with me tonight? At the diner?" "Yes." He closed his door. He went back to the bed. He did not sit. He stood at the window for a long time and watched the snow fall and tried to imagine a year from now. He could not. That night at the diner, neither of them ate much. The woman at the counter brought them their usual without asking. Eunho looked at the menu without reading it. One did not say anything. He waited. "Tomorrow," Eunho said. "Tomorrow. I am not saying yes. I am also not saying no. I am saying I will tell you in the morning." "All right." One nodded once. He did not press. They paid. They walked back across the street. The snow had thickened. Eunho's wool coat was wet at the shoulders by the time they reached the lobby. In the elevator, going up, neither of them spoke. At their doors, Eunho stopped. One stopped a step behind him. "I am scared," Eunho said. He did not look back. "I know. Not of him. I mean, yes, of him, but not only of him. I am scared of choosing wrong. I have not chosen anything in 7 years. The first thing I choose, my parents are going to be in it. You are going to be in it. People other than me are going to take a risk because of what I say. I do not know how to do that. I never had to learn. You are learning now. I am not good at it. You do not have to be good at it. You only have to do it." Eunho turned. He was very close to Won, closer than he had been at any point in 3 weeks. He could smell the iron and the walnut directly, no door between them, and the peach came up in him without permission and hung there in the small space. Won did not move. "You only met me 3 weeks ago," Eunho said. "Yes." "Why are you doing this?" Won did not answer right away. "I do not have a clean answer for you," he said finally. "I have known you 3 weeks. I have known what was happening to you for longer than that, in pieces, and I have known it for sure since the platform. The reason I am doing this is the same reason I would be doing it if you were a stranger. He should not have done it. Someone should have stopped it years ago. The fact that the someone turned out to be me is a problem with my family, not a sign that I have invented a feeling about you in 3 weeks. Okay. I have not invented a feeling about you in 3 weeks. Okay. You do not have to know what I am to you. I do not know what I am to you. I am not asking you to know. I am asking you to go home to your parents. Okay. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Good night, Eunho. Good night. He went into his room. He closed the door. He stood with his back against it for a long minute. He could feel Won on the other side, not moving, not leaving yet. Then the iron faded slightly as Won walked the few feet to his own door, and Eunho heard the quiet sound of a man going into a room, and he lowered himself to sit on the floor with his back still against the door, and he stayed there for a long time. He did not sleep until almost 5 in the morning. Even then, he did not sleep deeply. He woke at 7 with a decision sitting in him that he had not said out loud to himself yet, and the decision was not steady, and he did not trust it, and he did not know if he would still have it when he opened his door. In the morning, Eunho woke before Won was in the hall. He had slept badly and not for long. He got up. He showered. He put on the only clean shirt he had, which was one Won had bought him on the 4th day from the small shop down the street. He went to the door of his room. He took a breath. He opened it. Won was already there. 2 coffees. Good morning? Good morning. Won held out the coffee. Eunho took it. Their fingers brushed. The peach came up briefly, then sank. Did you decide? Won said. Eunho opened his mouth. Before he could speak, the elevator dinged at the end of the hallway. Won's head turned slightly. Eunho went rigid. The doors opened and Jiwon stepped out. He was in a black coat. His hair was perfect. He had not slept in 2 days, but his face did not show it. The scent that came down the hallway with him was something Eunho's body knew before his mind did. Tobacco smoke that had cooled and gone bitter. Cold leather. Underneath it, the thin, sweet edge of bergamot, the cologne Jiwon had worn since the coffee shop. The cologne he layered over himself because his own scent was not good enough to lead with, and he had always known that. Eunho had stopped smelling it years ago. He was smelling it now. His stomach went over once, slowly, and stayed there. Jiwon looked down the hallway. He saw his brother standing close to the open door of a hotel room. He saw inside the open door the back of a smaller man in a wool coat he recognized, the wool coat he had told that man to throw out years ago. The smaller man turned, and for 1 second none of the 3 of them breathed. Eunho in the doorway, his coffee still in his hand, looked at his husband and did not move. Won, in the hallway, stayed where he was. Jiwon's face changed. The charm he had walked in with cracked. Underneath it was something hot and ugly. He looked at Eunho. He looked at his brother. He looked at the space between them. His mouth pulled into a smirk that had no warmth in it, only rage holding itself together by inches. So, Jiwon said. He took 1 step forward into the hallway. So, this is who was hiding you all along. That is the end of part 1. If you enjoyed the story, tell me your thoughts in the comments. Part 2 is on the way. I would love to hear from you.